The internet is arguably the greatest invention of our time. Because of the internet, we as developers have no limits. Welcome to the first lesson of the HTML series. In this lesson, we're going to cover all of the basics that are inside the HTML document structure. If you need help setting up your developer environment and are unsure of what software you need, then check out the Setting Up Your Developer Environment video. There, I walk you through all of the software and equipment you need to complete this series. In this video, I assume you have no knowledge of HTML, and by the end of the series, we will create a simple web page to display your resume using only HTML. All of the different parts in this series will total to about 1 hour's worth of video, but I encourage you to take the time to review the individual videos to truly understand the concepts in each videos. Each video builds upon each other, so you must understand the individual components to advance in this series. In each video, I have links to additional resources to help make sure you understand the material. This series should take about 1 week to complete, and if during any lesson you have a question, then please write it down in the comment section. I do try to respond to everyone. So let's get started with what is HTML and where is it used? HTML, or hypertext markup language, is at the core of every website. Whether you are looking at a website for a small business or an application for a large enterprise, if it's on the internet, it contains HTML. Imagine HTML very similar to the foundation of a house. The foundation of a house has all the structural pieces such as the concrete slab, the wood, and the beams. The foundation by itself doesn't look fancy, but it is the foundation on which the house is built. HTML primarily focuses on the visual components of a website, creating the user interface we interact with. It defines the structure and layout of web pages, including headings, paragraphs, images, links, and forms. But HTML is not just limited to websites. It is also used in email templates, online documentation, and other digital content. In order to understand how websites are built, we must cover front end and back end. The front end contains all of the visual components of a website. Anything and everything you see on a website is front end development. This could be things like a header with a navigation menu that has an effect when you hover over a link with the background color of blue. This could be the font that you use on a coming soon page that determines the style and the size of the font. The list of visuals goes on, and we will go over the basics in this series so you can start creating your own website. We won't be covering backend development much in this series, but it is important to learn so you can understand the different moving parts of a website. The backend is stuff that feeds the website that a user will never see. This could be data being called, such as a list of portfolio information, or data being sent, such as form data being submitted from a website. I'll discuss this more in a future series once we start discussing how to handle data. Now that we know the difference between front end and back end development, let's talk about how to actually display a website. First, let's create a folder. For this example, I'm going to call it My Project. Here we are going to place all of the files for our website. Now that I have created a folder, let's run Visual Studio. Before I create a new file, I will download a Visual Studio extension called Live Server. This will allow for me to spin up a server inside of Visual Studio. And I can download that by going to the extensions and going to Live Server and clicking on the icon that looks just like this. From here, if you click on Install, then you will see in the bottom right hand corner when it has been installed. I won't cover anything about servers in this series, but I want you to know how to display your HTML files inside of a browser. So let's go back to our folder structure. The first thing that we're going to want to do is open up our project. If you do not see this blue button, then what you can do is just go to File, Open Folder, and then go to your folder. Now typically when you name a file index.html, you tell the server that this file is what you want to spin up as your homepage. This could be adjusted in some settings, but we will take advantage of the default naming convention in this example series and create a new file called index.html. In Visual Studio, you can do that by either clicking on this new file icon or right-clicking inside the sidebar and clicking on New File. Inside of here, I'm going to do index.html, and I've created a new file. Inside of this file, let's just write welcome to my homepage. Since we downloaded Live Server, we can click on the icon in the bottom right corner that says Go Live. After you click on Go Live, a new web page with the text that we created will appear in your default browser. Now, technically you don't need to spin up a server. If you double click on the file, it will open the file inside your default browser. But notice that this is just opening up the file inside of your computer file structure. So let's go back to the browser that was opened up whenever we clicked on Live Server. What we see inside of our URL is our domain with our port number, and then followed by our subfolders. Notice that index.html is what appeared whenever we clicked on Go Live. If I were to actually delete index.html and press enter, notice that it's the same page. And I can verify this because if I were to make an edit and save it and refresh, then you can see that that edit also gets previewed. Let's go back and save our file. So let's create a new file, and we're going to call it test.html. Inside of this test, I'm just going to put down, this is my test page. If I were to go back up to the URL, and after our domain, I put /test.html, then what we see is the contents that exist for test.html. So to access your HTML file, you can go to your browser, and after your domain, you can type / and your file name, and that will allow you to see your file. Let's now talk about elements and what they are. Elements contain 3 parts: an opening tag, a closing tag, and the information between both tags, which is called the content. In HTML, you have to have an opening tag, which would look like this. To have a complete element, you must have a closing tag, which would look like this. These opening and closing tags tell the browser what kind of element you want to display in the browser. These elements can have child elements inside of them. You can write a child element by opening up another element inside the original element. This is called nesting. There's also a third type of element called self-closed elements that look like this. We won't cover this type of element much in this series, but it is common, especially if you see things like an image tag. But we will come back to this feature in a more advanced series. But if you see an element like this, then know you are looking at a self-closed element. Elements can take attributes. We'll cover common attributes in this series, but if you want to check out more types of attributes, then check out the description in the video. It will contain a link where you can research additional attributes. Attributes provide more information about the element and are always placed inside the opening tag. Outside of elements, it's important for us to also talk about the doctype. All HTML must start with a doctype declaration. Doctype is not an HTML tag, but it provides information to the browser on what kind of file to expect. In the early days of web development, many attributes were needed inside the doctype, but since HTML5, the only information needed inside the doctype is HTML. Doctype is not case sensitive, but it is common to see it in all uppercase or all lowercase. Below the doctype, you start an HTML document with the HTML element. This wraps all the components of an HTML document. The HTML element takes a language attribute that is called lang. To use that, we will want to add the name with the value en inside of that element, which stands for English. Inside the HTML tag, you'll need the head element and the body element. The head contains all the metadata that is sent to the browser. We'll dive deeper into the head element in the SEO section of this series, but for the time being, just know that the head element sends metadata to the browser. Everything in the head element is not visible to the user, but it's information that browsers need. The part we're primarily going to focus on in this series is the body element. The body element contains all the contents of an HTML document that are visible to a user. Examples of these contents are sections, paragraphs, images, links, tables, lists, and much more. To simplify, the 4 pieces that you need inside of an HTML document are the doctype, the HTML element, the head element, and the body element. And the information inside the head is sent to the browser, and the information in the body is what creates the visual components of a website. I know I just threw a lot of information at you, and don't worry, like I mentioned, there is a PDF for you to reference that you can find down in the description. And if you still don't find that helpful, then please leave a question down in the comments section, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. I hope you found some value in this video, and if you did, then please like the video and subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you for your support, keep up the hard work, and I'll see you in the next one.